giving authorities the precedent to say, hey, we are going to make an ethical, moral judgment about the software that you're running on your computer, and we're going to, tax you, fine you, imprison you based on those judgments. I mean, that is a Pandora's box that just, like, all the evil. You mentioned Orwell, Orwell didn't even imagine that one, right? Like, we're creating a state of dystopia that would be absolutely horrendous, and we see it in the news right now.
Are you seeing what's going on in the UK right now?
Oh yeah, horrible.
I mean, this is like unfathomable. What's happening? I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, they're even threatening like extradition of American citizens. And like, hey, fuckers, come get me.
Are you guys? They're out of their fucking minds. I mean, they're nuts. I mean, this is like totally dystopian.
Yeah.
Just an attack on the most basic human right of free speech. I mean, this is unbelievable. I got friends in the UK right now that are like telling me, they're like defending this to me in conversations. I'm like, are you guys fucking insane? Are you nuts?
Yeah.
Like, oh, but it's hate speech or it's this. I mean, I'm like, wait till the other party gets in power and see what they do against your speech. What happens when your speech is now disinformation, right? Or hateful, right? All these subjective terms depending on who's interpreting them. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous.
Right. I mean, it's one thing. But I'm a pretty strong free speech advocate, so there's really no case. It'd be one thing though if a guy took a selfie of himself with his AK-47 and posted a thing that says, I'm on my way to shoot you.
Yeah. Like a threat.
Like a
legitimate threat. I mean,
yeah. But even then, my view would be he has the right to express that in speech. And I would say, thank him for warning everybody that he did it instead of suppressing it. But yeah, and also in the news, kind of somewhat shocking, is Norway in the last 7 to 10 days has brought back talk of banning Bitcoin mining.
Yeah, I was looking at putting equipment and machines there for years, and it's like the same thing with a lot of blue states here in the U.S. You've got how do you know what the political climate's going to be? How can you be comfortable doing a business there? So I ultimately pulled away from deploying there because I wasn't sure what their little, I don't know what it's called. They have like a little Congress or a little, I forget the exact terminology of what it is, but like they like swing with the wind. You know what I mean? It's like, imagine investing millions of dollars and then the Congress or whatever it's called changes. I don't know the Norwegian word. Paul, maybe you can look it up, what the Norwegian Congress is called. Look that up for us. I'm curious. It's got they call it something, but like, they just like swing with the wind, it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. And the people, whether that's true in the UK or in Norway, or I've spent a lot of time in Europe in my life. I was in both Prague and Spain in June, doing a lot of Bitcoin-oriented business. And what I find especially interesting, especially the Western European markets, they have there's just not that much passion there. Like they're a mind your own business society. And by mind your own business, I don't mean that in the free, I mean like, hey, something bad is happening, but it's not affecting me. Therefore, yeah. I just don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to stand up for.
It's like that famous quote. What was the guy, the Jew from the Holocaust? And what did he say? He was like, first they came for the trade unions, and I wasn't a trade union, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for the socialists, and I was a socialist, so I didn't say anything. Then they came for me, and there was nobody left, or you know what I mean, something like that.
Yeah, and in Western Europe, the Canadians, for instance, this same sort of attitude seems to permeate. But when you go to other areas, like I was in Prague, so I met with a lot of people from the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, the Ukraine, places like that. Whole different attitude. Like those people have balls. They get it. They take it very seriously. And a lot of it's, depending on the age, but almost everybody either was directly impacted by like Soviet Bloc era activities, or their parents were. But the stories are still raw and fresh, and they know what it means to be oppressed. They know what property seizure looks like.
Yeah.
And of course, they're in the back door of Ukraine right now, so they have even real world examples.
It's that famous quote, those who don't know their history tend to repeat it, but those who do know their history, it's like,
Right.
they're not going to give up their rights so easily.
Yeah. And what's fascinating too is I go to conferences kind of all over the world, and I talk to people all over the world. What I really appreciated about being in Prague, which is an event there called BTC Prague, about 7,500 people there. Most of the people being people from that region of the world, some Poles, Austrians, Germans, as well. But those people from that area that lived in former Soviet Bloc countries, they get Bitcoin at a different level. So the typical Westerner gets into Bitcoin for number go up, right? And FOMO and these sort of things. And many of them, as they traverse down the rabbit hole, end up in a deeper place with a deeper purpose, right? That they're happy for the number go up. Don't get me wrong, but they get freedom and they get sovereignty and they get these other things come into play. When you go to Prague and you start talking around and you're having a beer after the show with people, things like that, you find they're right there already. They didn't come in for number go up. They came in because property rights really mean something to them. For instance, like at the fundamental level, like, oh, you mean I can own this thing and I can walk out with 12 words or 24 words or a USB stick and nobody can take it from me? Well, my family could really use that, right? So there, what's great is you have this adoption curve that's much further along there. And even older generation, like I met, I had the opportunity to go to the Czech Parliament with a group called the Open Dialogue Foundation.
We actually just had Ludmila Kozlovska. She was here about a couple days ago.
Yeah, well, great lady, and I accompanied her to a visit with a senator in the Czech Parliament. And he's about my age. I'm 60. I think he was 58 or something like that. And what he talked about was remembering as a child, a young boy, in the 80s, the Soviet tanks rolling through the streets of Prague. So the Czech people at that time were starting to kind of push back. The Berlin Wall hadn't fallen yet. So they were still under the control, but the Russians were losing the control. And he said, he remembers just being absolutely terrified as, basically, think about tanks rolling down your neighborhood streets and, what impression that would make. So that's all stark and real. And, what was interesting, I think it's okay for me to share this. We were talking about energy was the main purpose. Well, we were talking about Bitcoin and energy and some things like that. And he said, well, one of the things that he's working on is the development of several nuclear facilities in the Czech Republic, each about 1 gigawatt in size.
Oh, wow.
The idea being eventually to do 4. Since I had that meeting with them, they've actually announced 2 of them already, that they're in the development of 2 of them. And part of the reason is that the insanity of Western Europe is such that they've given up all of the fossil fuel and the majority of the nuclear that they had that created the base load of the grid there. And they have massive problems creating, grid stability, because while the green energy that they developed typically vastly exceeds the amount of demand, when they need it the most,
it's not available.
And they have this huge problem. And so
that's really the problem with intermittent renewables until we can figure out more cost-effective battery storage or some kind of kinetic system.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, I can tell you some battery stories in a second. That's a long way off. It's not an overnight thing. But, they're able as a smaller country, a more nimble country, to capitalize on this. And they're very pragmatic. They don't have, they're not battling like in Germany right now, these philosophical, people should consume less energy. You know, they view the consumption of energy as almost an evil thing. They don't view it that way. They view it in a pragmatic way. And you can almost see a schism to a certain degree in the EU.
Would you expect anything less from Prague?
Yeah. Yeah.
It just makes sense. They're pragmatic.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good one. Well, I was also talking about, I know we're kind of all over the place here, but
we got time.
The thing about energy that I think a lot of people don't understand is like batteries. Battery technology develops at a molasses rate. And it's an area of technology where people should not expect to see the same kind of curve that they see in other technologies. Where we've already talked about, gradually then suddenly and these rapid adaptations. But batteries are a unique case. And it starts, this hits home for me because very early in my career, I was working on a laptop design. I was a junior engineer, and one of the more senior engineers, who was somewhat of a mentor to me technically, had given me an assignment to work on some charging circuitry for a battery pack. And what he said to me was, as he sat me down to talk to me about it, he said, "Bob, do you know the difference between a battery and a bomb?" And I said, "Of course, no. I don't know the difference between a battery and bomb." He said, "Well, the difference between a battery and the bomb is the ability to control the rate of the energy discharge." So that was his way of saying to me, "You do this wrong, you just turn this thing into a bomb." So, and you see this in real world, right? I mean, any whether it's a car, a laptop, a phone, there are border cases. I don't want people to be overly concerned because there's a lot of detail that goes into these, but the design of the battery pack and the design of the charging circuitry has to be done at a really, really precise level. And when you do it wrong, really bad things happen. And chemicals like lithium, magnesium, phosphorus, cadmium, those are key pieces of battery development. And typically, they're highly explosive.